What's going on, guys? This is Pseychie, and it's been a while since we've done one of these. I know I'm a little bit late to the party, being like, a month into the new patch by this point, but I want to take a look at one of the new weapons that was introduced in 3.4. It's the sewing scissors. It provides a simple solution to a simple problem. You want to hit enemies hard? Well, the scissors has got it. It's only got 2 attacks in its combo, but luckily both of them are really good. And right off the bat, we can see that the range of it is enormous. Like, that's probably some of the biggest weapon hitboxes I've seen. The only weapon I could compare it to is probably Scythe Claws. So this has a unique property. Whenever you kill an enemy with one of the strikes, if any other enemies that are hit within the same hitbox will also be killed. So you've seen it a little bit with the elites there, but essentially if there's like a small rat that's running around, and then you kill the rat, and then you also catch one of the elites inside the hitbox, and the elite will also die. So you might have seen it briefly when I killed the elite of a knight, where it was actually invincible. And even though through normal means you can't really damage an invincible enemy, with the scissors you can actually bypass that, which is probably one of the most unique selling points of this weapon. And not to mention there is also a unique animation where you literally cut your foes in half. You love to see it. So I'm going to mention it now since I will probably forget it a bit later. I saw the legendary version for this weapon and it's honestly kinda strange. So essentially every kill you get with the scissors will count for 3 kills for your kill streak. It's really weird, like there's no effect like that in the game. I could see it being helpful if you really want the kill streak doors. But in terms of gameplay, it doesn't affect you in any way. So the legendary is kind of a weird one. Though I do have to appreciate them for actually trying out new things. So now that we're reaching the end of May, by the way, this month went by so fast. I thought I'd get a little bit off topic and talk about why my upload schedule is a little bit weak at the moment. So at the end of April, I graduated from this coding bootcamp where I study web development. And when I signed up for it, obviously they advertise it to be to have like a 90% acceptance rate into jobs. But job searching, it's like a whole different ballpark. Originally, I thought I'd feel free since I don't have school anymore. I mean, it's basically every kid's dream, right? You know, not having to go to school. I've longed for this moment when I was still in grade school, but now it's a little bit different. So I thought I had a lot more freedom for creating videos in addition to like job finding and that kind of stuff, but for some reason, now that there's no clear goal to work towards, like there's no assignments, there's no projects to do, I am doing a couple of my own projects on the side, so that is something. But in terms of like not having a clear goal to work towards when you have school or official work, I just kind of lost motivation to do a lot of things. But I do have to say, whenever I upload a new video, I feel like an immense amount of satisfaction, like I have done something, you know? And I feel like I'm in a pretty fortunate situation where I can technically work whenever I want. Job finding does take out a big chunk of my time, and the thing is, I graduated at a pretty unfortunate time, so I'm sure everyone's heard of late last year where there's a big tech layoff, so not a lot of places are hiring right now. Obviously, when I try to bring that up during like career advising, they just like brushed it off and dodged the question, because obviously they're not gonna mention that, you know, it's hard to find a job right now. And I do want to get back to making more videos. I have a couple more video ideas in terms of showcases, and I also have like a big project on the side. It's gonna take me a while to complete it, but it's essentially a deep dive into one of my favorite genre of games of all time. It's kind of like similar to talking about a roguelike, but not really. But speaking of roguelikes, I'm actually pretty excited about the games that are coming out this year, and I was wondering if people will want to see Hades 2 content. So that has been scheduled to release sometime this year in early access, though with a lot of delays that are being announced, I can't really tell if that's what I can expect. So Silksong got delayed. That was a big one I was looking forward towards. I actually plan to playing that on this channel. And then you also hear about the AAA titles that just been failing left and right, so it kind of paints a pretty bleak picture on the gaming landscape. But I'm feeling pretty hopeful, and you know, if a game fails, I'm just not gonna buy it. In terms of other series, I was actually planning on making like a live stream playthrough of 0 to 5 BC. I think I'm gonna call it something like 0 to Hero. Essentially, it's just gonna be me streaming the game, going from 0 to 5 BC on like a new fresh save file. And I might do one of these like every year or so, just to kind of get a feel of how things have changed around the dead cells. And then I'm going to find something really peculiar here. There's an ominous looking mask, and then I actually ended up unlocking the Simon out, which I had no idea existed. I mean, that's the thing with this game, you just keep finding new stuff to play with. So yeah, those are the games on my radar. Hades 2, Silksong, and then I think next year, Zenless Zone Zero is also one that I'm looking forward to. Like, I know some people just like to hate on gacha games like Genshin Impact or Honkai, but what I can confidently say about the company that makes them is that they are very polished. Which, you know, I can't really say the same about a lot of AAA game companies these days. So we're moving up to the new boss fight. Actually, I fought this like once during one of my showcases already. But Death. Really interesting boss fight. I think I'm getting a bit used to it now, as you can actually practice against them in the training room now. Though, unfortunately, with the scissors, this is one of the unfortunate realities with a lot of these weapon effects, is that obviously you're not going to be able to insta-kill Death. That's just not how it works. So while yes, the effect of the sewing scissors is quite cool, it's basically like a beat stick in bosses, because it doesn't work. But in terms of sheer damage output, it's actually not that bad. And you can see I'm kind of getting used to his attacks now. Like, I'm trying to get a feel of what attacks are parryable and what the windows are for the parries. And yeah, I did expand one of my health flasks, but I think Death is a pretty well-balanced boss, and yeah, he's gonna go down. I gotta say, I'm definitely enjoying the first half of the Castlevania areas as opposed to the second half. I do like the Dracula fight, but I don't exactly like the repetitiveness of Dracula's castle, especially in the late game version. And a part of that is because the requirement to getting there is just so strict and so weird. Like, you can't go to the early game Castlevania places, and then you have to fight specifically Timekeeper, which is an oddly specific path that they want you to take. So we're in the Fractured Shrines. Main reason I picked this biome is because you get the food shop in the beginning of the biome, which is actually something I just recently found out. It almost feels like the food shop is like near the first island or so. So you get a really quick top up of health, and then you also get the legendary weapons. So I just did a top 10 ranking of my favorite 10 legendary weapons, and then this biome is a big incentive to go and get one of them, since you never know what you're gonna find. As I mentioned in that video, legendaries do change the way you play the game in a pretty considerable way. Now obviously not all of the weapons are gonna feel completely unique, but you never know what you're gonna see. And even then, I'm pretty surprised by the creativity of the legendary affixes in the game. So we're gonna beat up the Stone Titan here, and we're gonna enter the vault. So I ended up picking the legendary Wolf Trap, because I sure as hell was not picking the Force Shield as well as the legendary door. So I forgot to show this off, but the Wolf Trap has a fairly generic legendary effect. I'm not sure if it's like a Force affix. I'll probably show it on the screen because I forgot to do it in the editing footage. But the legendary Wolf Trap will freeze all nearby enemies when the effect ends, which I guess is okay, but if you're rooting things, you probably don't need things to freeze as well. And it's been a while since I've played a run, but you're gonna see me get pretty rusty in terms of the platforming. I do appreciate that you don't get hurt as much as you did in some of the previous patches, as I definitely don't think touching spikes or falling into pits should be that punishing. So by this point of the run, you're basically looking at solidifying your build, and how I would like to think of it, at least I can kind of explain what my rationale is when I'm trying to min-max my damage at this point, because I definitely want people to take away something educational they can do in their runs. So for now, I have the cannon, and then I also have a wolf trap. My rationale right now is that if I'm playing the sewing scissors, I definitely want like some affixes that synergize with like rooting, or if like the cannon had poison on it. I'm not sure what affixes the cannon and the wolf traps have, as I'm currently recording this away from my computer. When you're fishing for affixes on your scissors, you basically just want more damage modifiers, like plus damage to rooting, plus damage to poison, or something like that. But other than that, we're cruising right along. I'm just gonna finish off the rest of the enemies here. And then I did buy a health flask. I don't see it in the footage, but I definitely remember doing it. And that's also one of the reasons why I routed to the Fractured Shrines. But I'm going to go to Undying Shores and then fight the Scarecrow. And then for a brief moment there, I was really surprised that I was seeing those harpies from Castle Outskirts. And I remember that's the flavor of Undying Shores, is that it features enemies that you have faced in the run. So in a lot of cases, every time you come here, it's going to have different enemies for you to fight. which is a pretty cool feature, but I certainly wouldn't plan my builds around this biome. So I'm also trying out one of the mutations that I've been sleeping on for the past couple of years actually. I believe it's Blind Faith. It's the one where every time you parry, it reduces the cooldown of your skills. Originally, I thought it's just not very good, as skill cooldowns are not that long anyways, and that you possibly didn't need it in a lot of situations. But when we get to the boss fights, especially the endgame ones, like I was pleasantly surprised how well it performed. So this late into the game, I'm getting a pretty good feel about the scissors. Obviously, it doesn't work in bosses, and that you just have to rely on the sheer damage output. But in biomes, you can actually see there's quite a bit of strategy involved if you're trying to min-max its use. Like in some situations, I encountered an elite, and I actually intentionally escaped to another platform where there's like a smaller enemy, and I just grouped them together to kill the smaller target, and then it will instantly kill the elite. So there's also a bit of strategy involved there, which I really like. And then going into the Scarecrow, I was a little bit iffy about this one. The scissors is not the slowest of survival weapons, but I thought I might have a little bit of trouble keeping up with the attack windows. So luckily I did have the spike shield, and then the wolf trap does a great job as always, locking down some of the later bosses. So when the Scarecrow launches like the mushrooms, this is what I would consider like the best time to attack it. And as long as you stay aggressive, you're basically going to be finished with this fight in like 20 or so seconds. I'm then gonna mess up some of the timings here and there because I wasn't sure how long the route of the wolf trap would last for, but I just relied on my cannons. I relied on my spike shield, fortunately, and yeah, there we go. So I wanted to shake things up a little bit, so I'm going to go into the Queen and the Sea areas once again. I very rarely come here with a survival setup, as I just like the flexibility of attacking whenever you want, especially in the Servants fight. I definitely think it's like an infinitely harder fight than the Queen. But I know I've criticized the new Queen and Sea areas when it first came out, but honestly now I'm kind of, it's kind of growing on me. Like yes, I thought the coral platform mechanic was a little bit strange, as the best strategy literally is to kill everything before they even break the floors, before everything becomes too disruptive. But you can play around it obviously, and if you optimize, like if you prioritize which targets you want to eliminate before attacking others, you can actually still get some pretty decent clears in. And this is a little bit off topic, but I definitely think there should be a food shop here. If you think about it, there is one in the 5BC biome, and especially if we're considering the size of the Infested Shipwreck, like if you go and open up your map, when you're in this biome, the map is absolutely huge. It rivals the size of the cavern as well as the bank. So you would think that for such a long endgame area, you'll be given a little bit of a rebreather with a food shop or something like that. But this is also a pretty good opportunity to show off these scissors one last time. There's a lot of explosive bats, and then there's also those small critters running around. They make fantastic candidates to trigger the scissors insta-kill mechanic, and this is like the last area in the game where I can take advantage of it. We're going to be going into the servants and then the queen bosses, and obviously they can't be instantly killed. So if I can show off as much footage of the scissors working at its best state, I'm gonna show it off. So despite having a challenge rift, and then I think like some pretty decent amulet I'm using right now, the scroll count for this run is still considered like slightly below average, I want to say. Usually when you get to the endgame areas, especially like the final bosses, you have around 32 stats. And this can matter a little bit when you're fighting the endgame bosses, as well. If the fight lasts for a shorter amount of time, then you have a lesser chance of dying. But overall, before we get to the endgame bosses, I do want to say that I enjoyed the mechanics of the scissors. I think it's a pretty great design weapon. So without further ado, we're gonna go to the Lighthouse. This is definitely gonna be one of the more riskier Lighthouse sections in my runs, but lately I have been warming up to the Servants boss fight. Originally, I thought the chase was just, it felt so frantic, like you're constantly being attacked against. And there's also the rising flames, so you have to find when is like a good time to climb and when is a good time to retaliate. And I've definitely been playing a little bit more aggressively in these chase sequences. So you see that when I think that I am safe from like an enemy attack, I will be trying to get in some sneak attacks. It overall lowers the difficulty when you're actually facing them in the fight at the end, and it just makes things a bit more interesting. Like, when we're talking about Calliope with the Wrecking Ball, it's pretty easy to dodge. I think she only has like 2 attacks that she can do against you during the chase sequence. One is like a melee strike and the other one is a ranged attack. They're both pretty easy to dodge as long as you know what you're doing. And even in this fight, like, yeah, the scissors is a beat stick, but the damage is still fairly decent. Oh, and by the way, they did rework disengagement. So this is version 3.4, where disengagement only triggers once per biome now. So a gripe I've always had with it is that if I used it in the Servants fight, for example, and then I'm going into the Queen fight on top of the Lighthouse, then I will have to like sit in the transition room until the 5-minute cooldown is up, so the disengagement mutation actually refreshes. But now they kind of solved the problem, but it is designed in a different way now. So I guess like if you really wanted to maximize your chance of winning with the old version, you could just sit around like during these transition rooms, though I'm not sure if that's a good idea on 5BC since you still get melees. You will wait there until the 5-minute cooldown for disengagement comes back, so you can use it again in the upcoming fight. It's a little scummy, but I'm sure it works. So approaching the second fight, and having seen this fight like so many times already, you really start to see how formulaic things can get. Like, at the end of the day, no matter what game you're playing, every single boss in the game is like a robot. It's an AI. It's pre-programmed to do a certain set of moves, and as long as you can predict that, then you're pretty much set. So Euterpe is definitely the most annoying one. She just hops around all over the place, and you can see that I actually trapped her with these wolf trap, except she just breaks out of it. Luckily though, you can see how wide the range of the scissors are. So yeah, like, you can see how she's basically just repeating the exact same moves all over again. Just repeat the exact same pattern and then eventually you'll get the fight. Alright, so that's 2 fights down, and then we're gonna enter what I believe is the most dangerous portion of the Lighthouse chase. On this like first couple platforms, you can do some damage to both of the servants before getting to Cleo, and I'm just getting stuck on some terrain here. I'm definitely gonna use the healing flask now. Surprisingly, for whatever reason, disengagement did not trigger, so I still have it for the upcoming bosses. And then you definitely don't want to get hit by Cleo. She's the one that does the most amount of damage, but as long as you're quick on your feet and then you just keep climbing, they will probably never catch up to you. And it's a little bit unfortunate as you can't practice the Lighthouse chase sequence in the training room. It's only the final encounter that you can practice. But it's times like these where burst damage is just incredibly helpful to have. Like, if you can quickly dish out a bunch of damage at the same time, you can stop some of them from chasing you. So going into the final fight, and then something I like to do is just jump up on the platform immediately, as the Cleo, the one with the Tonfas, will always initiate with these 3 melee strikes. And then what I realized is that all 3 of them can't attack you at the same time, because that would obviously just be way too chaotic. You definitely want to watch out for Cleo. She's the one that like spins across the room with the Tonfas, though I really wish we could do that as the beheaded as well. That would be pretty cool. But if you have a shield, like in this run, you can just interrupt the whole thing and still get in some damage. Of course, it would have been pretty interesting to see what would happen if you land the killing blow on one of the servants, and then you also hit another servant with the same attack if you're using the scissors. I definitely don't think it's going to insta-kill anything, but it would have been interesting to try out. So Calliope is usually the one that goes down first, and then Cleo, and then of course, Euterpe is the one that goes down last. She just likes to fire from the platforms, and overall just be really annoying to deal with. But I know the fight can seem frantic at times. I definitely thought that way when I first encountered them. But again, just like what I said previously about bosses in video games, they're all just AIs. And then Cleo's gonna die, but she's gonna get a seizure at the last second there. And then Euterpe just kind of lost the will to live. I'm just gonna get in some hits and I'm gonna do like a quick victory dance here just to assert my dominance. I don't know what happened there, but hey, a free kill is a free kill. Never seen that before, but I'm not complaining. But once we get to the Queen, you'll realize just how big of a far cry these 2 fights are. Like, if we compare the amount of resources it took for me to get through the servants versus this upcoming Queen fight, I did use up a health flask, and the fights took on a pretty extended amount of time, I want to say. But with the Queen, you can see that she gets locked down by Wolf Trap rather easily. And while yes, the damage isn't exactly spectacular, with cooldown reductions, and this is what I was talking about earlier with Blind Faith, is that you just have to parry once, and then you can get in so much cooldown reduction on your skills. But for a second there, I actually thought the scissors did 2 instances of damage instead of just 1, And the idea is that it accounts for like each blade of the scissors, so that would have been a pretty cool idea. I'm not sure if that's actually the case though. And then, yeah, something I realized is the scissors actually ignores like the queen's shield. So that's also a pretty interesting detail. And she's gonna get locked down by the wolf traps. And yeah, that is a flawless queen fight. So really big differences between the servants and this one. Kinda makes you wonder who the real final boss is. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this Sewing Scissors showcase at the end of this month. Again, I'll try to pick up the upload schedule from now on, and you can stay tuned to the new series that I'm going to be doing, where I do a walkthrough of 0 to 5 BC. So I'm going to get some planning done on that. As always, enjoy the game, and have a great day.